Okay, so next I'd like to talk about science and technology. Now, there were plenty of advancements in science and technology during the Renaissance, but I'm going to point out these two in particular. So, first, you have the heliocentrism theory of Nicholas Copernicus. Now, he borrowed this idea from the ancient Greek astronomer and mathematician Aristarchus. And basically, this is the idea that actually the sun does not revolve around the earth, it's the other way around. The earth is moving around the sun. And then we have the Gutenberg printing press. Okay. Now, I want to spend a little extra time talking about this because this is a really, really big deal. Okay. Prior to the printing press, it was very difficult to make books. All books, believe it or not, were made by hand. They were very painstakingly done. And so very few people could afford to own books. So what the printing press did was it made books hugely more affordable. And all of a sudden, people demanded books in all sorts of different subjects. So instead of just like, say, religious texts like the Bible, you have history and books about economics and politics and chemistry and so on. Okay, this map here shows you, so you have initially one printing press, right, in 1450, but by 1500 you see all of these cities across Europe that have printing, right? And what this does is it increases literacy. Now, I've talked to a lot of students over the years about just how important this is. Now, it's easy to take for granted, the fact that you can read. But what that really is, truly, is power. Because if you can read, then you can learn about more things. And if you can learn about more things, you can use that knowledge to change your station in life. You'll see historically, if one group of people ever wanted to oppress another group of people, like keep them in their place, they did it by keeping them ignorant and preventing them from reading was a big part of that. For example, if you look in the American South, slaves not being allowed to learn to read, could not be taught to read. This is exactly what I'm talking about here. Okay. All right. Literature. I don't need to tell you who this is. You know exactly, without my saying so. But yes, this is William Shakespeare. No, he is not the only author of the Renaissance, but he's one that definitely comes to mind. So these are just a couple examples of his plays. Romeo and Juliet, that's the one that almost everybody knows. Typically today we think of this as a romance. It was intended originally as a comedy because those dumb kids did not listen to their parents and things didn't work out for them. Obviously, again, we don't see it that way anymore, but that's what the intention was. And then The Merchant of Venice. I'm not going to spoil that one for you. These are both great plays. You should check them out. I get a lot of students who are kind of afraid to go into Shakespeare because of the language, not sounding like we talk anymore, like nobody talks like that anymore. And the reality is that nobody talked like that even in Shakespeare's time, because Shakespeare had a tendency to make up words. But I would encourage you very strongly to check it out anyway, because you find that you get a feel for it once you start reading it, and especially if you get a chance to see it live or see a recording of a play, that really helps with your understanding of it too. All right, moving on, a little more literature here. Can't talk about Renaissance literature without giving a nod to Dante Alighieri, who famously wrote the Divine Comedy, which is not that funny, but is absolutely brilliant. So what the Divine Comedy is an epic poem. Okay, this is a poem that is a very long poem. It's really a whole entire book, right, that is written in verse. Right? If you know anything about verse and how difficult that is to write, even just a few lines, like 10 lines in verse, with a strict order, you can appreciate how complicated it must have been for Dante to write something like this. Okay, so the Divine Comedy is in 3 books: Inferno, which is hell, Purgatorio, purgatory, and Paradiso, paradise or heaven. It's about the travels of a man, Dante himself, through the Christian hell, purgatory, and heaven. And next we have my wife's favorite, John Milton's Paradise Lost. This is also an epic poem which describes the Christian story of the fall of man, how Adam and Eve got out of the Garden of Eden, and about the fallen angel Lucifer. This image here is a much later depiction of Satan as described in Milton's Paradise Lost. It's a long book. It's well worth the read. Just an incredible amount of allusions to other literature. And perhaps one of the most fascinating things about it is that you hear a good portion of the story from the perspective of Lucifer. And the way it's written, it's almost like he's the protagonist. Though in the back of your mind as you're reading, you know that he's Satan, and he's clearly not. But it's a really fascinating read if you want to put a little time and effort into reading a good book. Okay. So what I'd like you to do here is just take a minute, pause the video, write down just everything that you can think of. What did the Renaissance give to us? Now, if you need kind of a jumping board here, you could draw on this image alone. You'll note here Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, a lot of Greek philosophers in a painting, The School of Athens, done by Raphael, who is, of course, a Renaissance painter. So go ahead, pause the video, write down just whatever you can think of, just some bullet points, and then play the video and we'll go on to the next thing. Okay. So, this lesson has been interrupted by an alien landing. Yeah, I had to do something like this. Okay. So, because I am not there with you and you're watching this video, what you're going to need to do at this point is get your parents involved. Tell your parents that you would like them to play or ideally, I guess, one of your parents to play the role of an alien. So here's the scenario. So this alien has just crash landed on Earth. The spaceship has opened up and anyone can see this beam of white light in which the alien is standing. The alien apparently has some kind of device that enables him or her to speak English. And the president is sending a team, you, to act as informers to find out as much about the alien as possible. Now, the alien has agreed to answer exactly 6 questions, no more. Exactly 6 questions. And your task is to find out as much about this alien as possible. 6 questions, though. All right. Now, ideally, if you have at least 3 people, then you want to each take one of these groups. So you've got the historians. You can only ask about the alien's past. The scientists, you can only ask questions about the alien's body and technology. And then finally, philosophers, you can only ask questions about the alien's beliefs. Now, if you don't have at least 3 people, that's fine. What I'd like you to do in that case, if you're working as an individual, just do 2 questions for each of these categories, but only 2 for each category. Now, at that point, what I want you to do is turn to your alien parent and ask each of those questions. They are going to need to just sort of improvise and answer those questions on the spot. Okay, take a few minutes, pause the video, and complete this activity, then hit play when you're ready to move on. Okay. So hopefully what you are seeing in this activity is that you learn so much more about the alien as a group, right? Looking at the perspective of the historians, the scientists, the philosophers, as a collective is much more valuable than, say, just getting the information from the scientists or just getting the information from the historians. And that's a big part of what the Renaissance gave us, right? Multiple perspectives from varying schools of thought. So the last thing here, I'd like you to consider Da Vinci. We talked about Da Vinci a little bit ago, in so much as he was very much this kind of archetypal Renaissance man. In other words, he was interested in a lot of different things. He was a scientist, right? He was very interested in how the human body worked. He was interested in mechanics, interested in flight. He was interested in sculpture, right? He was interested in painting and so on. We have this quote here: simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Right? And what I would like you to do, this last thing that I'd like you to do, is just write a paragraph answering this question: how